In 2026, the United States started a war by posting a video. Not a declaration of war, not a formal diplomatic ultimatum, a video edit. The Pentagon's official account uploaded a high-definition montage of real cruise missiles hitting real buildings, cut with clips from Top Gun, set to the heavy techno theme from Mortal Kombat. It ended with a synthesized voice whispering, "Flawless victory." 2,000 people would be dead in 21 days. But first, we had to get the memes out of the way. Here is the question that should make you want to throw your smartphone into the deep end of the ocean. How does a global superpower announce a kinetic conflict with a 1990s video game reference? And how does the target country respond by firing the president with his own goddamn catchphrase? The answer involves a Lego minifigure, a Pixar-style short about a man's ego, and an Iranian general who understood one simple truth. In the attention economy, a bruised ego is more dangerous than a carrier strike group. Welcome to the first war where the casualty count was determined by the comment section. Let's talk about the Pentagon's media team, because apparently they thought the goal of warfare was getting a higher engagement rate than Mr. Beast. They named the operation Epic Fury. Not Desert Storm, not Iraqi Freedom, Epic Fury. It sounds like a limited edition flavor of Mountain Dew designed for 12-year-olds in a basement. They produced a highlight reel designed specifically for the vertical video algorithm. Rapid cuts, bass drops that sync with explosion frames. The subtext was arrogant. "We are so powerful, your national destruction is merely a spectacle for our domestic entertainment." The fatal flaw was that the regime in Tehran had been watching American media strategy since the early 2000s. They realized that you don't fight a reality show with a documentary. You fight it with a better reality show. While the United States was moving stealth bombers, Iran was preparing an animation suite. They did not respond with old-school threats. They responded with a parody of the movie Inside Out. The Iranian embassy in The Hague posted an AI-generated video that broke the Western internet in 4 hours. It depicted the interior of Donald Trump's head. 5 cartoon emotions sat at a control panel. They were labeled truth, lies, ego, fear, and Epstein. Every time the emotion lies tried to push a button to authorize a missile strike, the other 4 emotions tackled it to the ground. The video ended with a title card that read, "Not today, Pinocchio." It was sophisticated, it was funny, and more importantly, it was watched by 90 million people who had never previously considered visiting an Iranian diplomatic social media feed. It was a psychological masterclass in making the leader of the free world look like a toddler in a cockpit. Meanwhile, the consulate in Hyderabad posted a simple photograph of a massive, ancient tree. Just a tree. The caption read, "The age of this tree is older than the age of that entity." That entity meant Israel. A diplomatic mission just mocked the historical existence of a nuclear-armed state with a nature photo. This was the level of discourse we were dealing with. It was high-stakes diplomacy conducted via the logic of a schoolyard bully. But the counterattack that truly shattered the narrative was the Lego incident. The Iranian embassy in Pretoria posted a high-budget Lego animation. A tiny yellow Donald Trump figure stood on a plastic aircraft carrier. A voiceover announced, "You have 48 hours to reopen the Strait of Hormuz." The Lego Trump started sweating plastic beads. A Lego Iranian missile appeared. It moved toward the carrier. The Lego Trump screamed. The screen went black. The caption, "Just kidding, we will give you 5 days." Let's be clear about the reality behind the plastic blocks. The United States had publicly given Iran a 48-hour ultimatum. Iran did absolutely nothing. The United States then quietly extended the deadline to 5 days to avoid immediate escalation. A foreign hostile power had just summarized the administration's tactical retreat using children's toys. It was the ultimate humiliation. And then came the finishing move. Enter General Ebrahim Zolfagari. The man was a spokesman for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, but on that day, he was a stand-up comedian. He stood in front of a professional green screen, looked directly into the camera lens, and delivered the line that would define the decade. "Hey Trump, you are fired." He delivered it with the exact cadence, the exact hand gesture, and the exact arrogant tilt of the head that Trump had used on The Apprentice for 14 seasons. The video was edited and posted within 3 hours. It garnered over 200 million views across all platforms. A general of a sanctioned power had just fired the President of the United States on the global stage. And the President, a man whose entire identity, ego, and brand are built on being the one who says those words, did not find the irony amusing. He didn't see a meme. He saw an existential threat to his reputation. This is where the absurdity compounds into something genuinely pathetic. American officials started using the same linguistic gymnastics we saw from the Kremlin in 2022. They refused to use the word war. It was a limited military operation, a campaign of punitive precision strikes. They promised the Iranian government would collapse in days. One national security advisor told a private group that Tehran would fall in 72 hours. The phrase leaked. The internet, which is essentially a global machine for making fun of failure, went into overdrive. Russian state media, watching the hypocrisy from the sidelines, couldn't resist. They ran segments titled, "History Repeats," noting that the American strategy now echoed the very same overconfidence they had mocked Russia for during the invasion of Ukraine. The irony was so dense you could have used it to shield the reactors at Natanz. Meanwhile, the actual war was no longer a joke. B-2 Spirits, stealth bombers designed to survive the end of the world, cratered the nuclear facilities. The strikes were technically flawless. They were effective. They killed hundreds of Iranian scientists and engineers. And yet, they did absolutely nothing to stop the digital onslaught. In fact, the memes became more vicious. The hashtag #TIACO began trending globally. Trump always chickens out. Iranian state media used it. American opposition accounts used it. Even the sailors in the Gulf were reportedly whispering it. The President of the United States, the master of the media cycle, had been reduced to a taco joke. But the jokes were a shroud for a brutal economic reality. The Strait of Hormuz was effectively closed. 20% of the world's oil was trapped. Fast attack boats were harassing tankers. The U.S. responded with more fire. The cycle of escalation was now a self-sustaining machine. One of the president's own former staffers posted on X, "We went from drain the swamp to drown in the Gulf." The post was liked by an Iranian diplomat. The war had two fronts. One was made of steel and blood. The other was made of pixels and mockery, and the pixels were winning. It becomes a trap. The Iranian meme campaign was brilliant. It was effective. It humiliated the most powerful man on earth. And that was its fatal error, because the president is not a man who reflects when his image is punctured. He escalates. We saw the same pattern with Zelensky in 2025. The Ukrainian leader didn't sign the minerals deal, and he was publicly ejected from the White House. We saw it with India when they refused tariff demands. The administration called their economy dead. Public humiliation is not a tool for negotiation in this era. It is a trigger for total commitment. The meme war locked both sides into a suicide pact. Iran had made the United States look weak, so the U.S. could not retreat without admitting defeat. The U.S. had used overwhelming force, so Iran could not blink without collapsing. The collapse wasn't the destruction of the buildings. The collapse was the realization that neither side could afford to stop the killing because they were both too afraid of being the punchline. The Iranian diplomats who produced the Pixar parody and the Lego animation, they weren't fired. They were promoted to heroes. They were celebrated as the architects of a new form of warfare. Meanwhile, General Zulfikar, the man who became a global icon for 15 seconds of fame, was now the primary focus of the Pentagon's targeting meetings. The video that made him a legend also made him a corpse. That is the final price of going viral in a real war. As the Tripoli assault ship carrying 2,000 Marines entered the Gulf, Zulfikar gave one last interview. His tone was no longer comedic, it was quiet. He was asked about the "You Are Fired" video. He smiled a tight, cold smile. "It was a joke," he said, "but the joke is over." He was wrong. The joke is never over. The joke is the only thing keeping United States from seeing the full horror of what we've done. The war started as a meme. It will end as a tragedy. And the final punchline will be written by whichever side is still standing when the last screen goes dark. History isn't boring. It's just a parade of people who forgot that you can't outrun the algorithm of your own ego. Subscribe if you're tired of textbooks that treat war like a chess match. Here, we call it what it is: a very expensive way for idiots to feel important.